session to be very interactive. So please feel free to kind of raise your hand, jump in if you have specific questions that are particular, to your business, to kind of your entrepreneurial journey. And we want to be able to really get into some of the stuff because that's really what it's all about. If you don't want to kind of speak up, feel free to just drop your question in the chat here. And as we're talking, I'll be sure to raise it. And you can also kind of text it to me privately if that's here, and I'll just ask it anonymously. So every way possible, we just want to be able to answer your questions. So with that said, let me introduce Michael Dermer.
Hi
Hi,
there.
Michael.
Good afternoon. Good morning. How are we doing?
Good, good. We have an awesome group here. So why don't we get into it?
Terrific. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your busy days. It's great to hear so much energy and passion around different entrepreneurial ventures from all over the country, all over the world. The topic that we're going to cover today is about scaling your business. And as Victoria said, please feel free to jump in and ask specific questions about your business. We want this to be interactive and helpful. One of the things that often happens in early stage companies, and we've all gone through this, is, you almost think of your business like the old solar system model, right? Where you have your head's in the middle and you're the sun, and everything revolves, all these planets revolve around you, and that's a business, right? Or put more simplistically, I start a pizza stand and I'm going to make every slice, right? And my heart and my love is in that slice, and then I make every slice. And then you start to realize, well, wait a minute, if I'm actually going to grow this and I'm going to scale it and I'm spending 80% of my time making the pizza, how is it that I'm actually going to grow? So what I want to do today is to spend some time on some techniques and processes that you can put in place that, even if it's just you can start to move your business towards kind of repeatability and scalability, so you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a better chance of success. For those of you that have access to our learning tools, there's a whole section called Running Your Business. And in Running Your Business, you've got a lot of the things that we're going to do here. We're going to talk about here. You can go in there, there's videos and templates and a bunch of stuff that you can use. So, a lot of times in an organization, especially an entrepreneurial organization, people think that process is a dirty word, right? You'll say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be processed. We're not going to be able to be creative and innovative. That's reserved for, IBM and bigger companies. And what we can tell you is that processes actually is what enables growth and scale, right? If so many of us felt in our early stages of our business, right, that we were doing the same things over and over again, right? And we'd run around and do it one week and run around and do it next week. And so there's that whole kind of chaos that goes with that. And you just don't feel like you're making the progress you can make. Secondly is consistency, right? When you do that, you just don't bring the consistency to your sales process, your marketing process, your operational process. And I know that we have different sizes of companies here. For some of you may say, well, I used to be a logistics manager for this big company, so this stuff's easy for me. But for others, it's like, wait a minute, I'm growing. And, the analogy we used in the Lonely Entrepreneur book was that, there's one hole in the dam and you take one finger, and then there's another hole and you take another finger, and then you use your toes, and then you're using your tongue, and that's not running a business, right? And you may be working 24 hours a day, right? You're making a lot of pizza, but you're like, I have all these customers and I have all this demand, which is the hard part, but I'm not growing. I'm not making as much money. I'm not having as much success, and I'm working 24 hours a day, right? So understand this is a pretty natural thing that happens, right? So what I'm going to try to do is kind of give you some things to think about to try to give you a better chance to kind of scale your businesses. There's a very tried and true principle called people, process, and metrics, right? And what that basically means is that organizations that grow put in place the people that own things, right? So I own sales, right? And I know that those people might all be you. So I understand that. We're going to talk about that in a minute, right? Somebody owns sales, okay? And they say, okay, number two is I have metrics. We're going to sell 10 bananas, okay? And then I have a process, let's say a weekly sales meeting, where I measure how are we doing against our 10 bananas, right? When you put in place people, process, and metrics, you are essentially operationalizing the ability for your business to grow. Because what happens? Well, across your business, you have all these different things that you're trying to do, right? And you've got all these different goals, and it's all kind of blended together. So one of the things you have to be able to do is say, okay, how do I put in place people, process, and metrics? Okay. Let's start with the metrics part. Many people work really hard and don't set very specific goals for the pieces of their business, right? So you've got to be able to put in place the metrics that determine whether or not you're being successful or not. I use the example of sales. It could be, I sell 10 bananas. It could be, I launch my website by March 5th. Okay. Whatever, if you don't have those metrics that tell you how you're doing, it's very, very difficult to grow your business. Okay. So that might mean rent my new location. It might need bring on my new employee. Whatever those goals are, you absolutely have to set those goals as the benchmarks of how you're doing. Okay. When you set those goals, I'm going to sell 10 bananas. You then say, okay, what is the process I'm going to use to make sure I'm sticking to that goal? So let's say, for example, you have a weekly sales meeting or a weekly launch my website meeting, right? Every Tuesday you show up and say, okay, we're supposed to launch our website on January 5th. Here's the 10 things we're doing. I'm going to bring all the people into that meeting, right? Maybe it's just you, a random student you have, a consultant, a freelancer, right? I'm not talking about having 100 people, right? It may just be you. But in that process, you're going into that process and saying, how are we doing? What are the steps we were taking? As opposed to 20 emails throughout the week, right? Running all over the place and making some progress, but not really in a way that can really help you grow your business. Okay. So if somebody says, well, how are we doing on the website? You know what the answer is? The answer is show up Tuesday at 10 o'clock and you'll find out. And then within that process, you become really efficient, right? You might have an advisor that's helping with that. You might have a student that's helping you with that. You might have your one employee that's responsible for that. But in that one meeting, you use that process to do all the stuff you need to do. And then you're going to come back a week later and do the same thing. Okay, so we've said we want to launch our website by January 5th. That's one goal. We've said we want to sell 10 bananas. That's another goal. We set up process for each of those. And that becomes the way we measure, not just measure, but adjust how we're doing. Hey, let's do this differently. Let's brainstorm on this. Okay. Like this is really boring, unsexy stuff, but this is the stuff that makes businesses grow. Okay. Now the third part is the people part. And we all know that in many cases, many people here are solopreneurs, right? Individual people. It's not like you're going to have split personalities to go into ABC, but when you have this process, when you go into your marketing meeting, you're essentially putting on that hat, right? You're putting on that hat to go, great. Now I'm the owner. I'm going to show up. Hopefully we're organized. We use project management tools, whatever it is, so we can see how we're doing. And in that meeting, I can use that to manage better. Okay. So these are kind of the guardrails that give you the ability to manage more effectively because there's only one of you, right? And you need this stuff to be able to advance. So set the goals of whatever it is, even if you don't know what the goal is supposed to be. So many times people are like, well, I want to do this amount of revenue, and that means I need to file 100 trademarks. And I don't know if that's the right goal. Okay. Use your best guess. Okay. But if you don't have a goal, it's impossible to align your effort appropriately. Put the process in place, okay, to be able to manage and measure. And then it may not just be you. Remember, even if you're the leader, the other people you're bringing to the table are going to come into this process. In a bigger company, the people part of it becomes that person who owns that, right? That head of sales, that head of product or whatever it is. Then they are the ones that are using the process and using the metrics to determine how they're doing. Okay. So this isn't so much just about performance management. This is about, okay, how do I grow a business? I got all this stuff going on. I've got demand, and that's great, but I got all this stuff I need to do. So how do I actually go about doing it in a way that's efficient and effective? Okay, so let me stop there. See, Victoria, for others, if there's any questions before I continue.
I think no questions right now. And I just want to say I just posted a link into the chat about some of the things that Michael was talking about, basic processes to put in place. So,
okay. Well, let me ask the group a question. How many of you wake up every day and know exactly what your goals are? And how many of you wake up every day going, I don't have many of my goals? Anybody on either extreme? No wrong answer. So anybody want to share? Tyree, go ahead.
I'm kind of both. Some days I wake up and I have this long to-do list or goal list, and then some days I wake up and I'm like, I know what I want to do, but I kind of just walk around the house literally like, I didn't write anything down yesterday, so I'm kind of lost. So I'm in between.
Yeah. So Tareen, here's a thing to think about. The things you do every day are not actually your goals. The things you do every day are the stuff you do that should always be aligned to your goals. So let's think of it this way. If I wake up every day and I'm in, Tareen, where are you located?
Tampa and Maryland.
All right, got it. So we're going to go from Tampa to Maryland, right? And you woke up and you just started driving, right? If you didn't know you were going to Maryland, right, you might drive west. And that's how we all feel sometimes when we don't set goals. So what I would say to you is, doing stuff is not goals, okay? When you sit down and say, I'm going to sell 10 bananas, that's your goal.
Got it.
Okay? I'm going to launch a new product by this date. That's your goal. Then your to-do lists and all that stuff, you should be asking yourselves, are these things that are contributing to those goals?
Got it.
Okay. Remember, we all work 24 hours a day. It's not that we're not trying, right? It's just that if it's not aligned to the goals that we're trying to achieve, what does it matter?
Right.
Okay. And that's when it starts to feel better. It starts to feel better when what you decided to do in a day, in a week, or a month is aligned to getting to Maryland.
Right.
Whereas a lot of times when we don't, you're like, wow, I drove really fast, but I'm in Missouri.
Right.
So how does that actually help me achieve my goal? Okay. So the goals and then the process, right? So even if it's you, it's like, okay, so take something like, for example, like prospecting, going out and trying to find new customers. Okay. Let's just say you said, well, for me to get $1 million in sales, I need to have 100 new customers, whatever it is. To get 100 new customers, I need 1,000 leads over the course of the year. So that means I need 80 leads a month. Well, when am I going to do that? Do I do it randomly through the day? Well, no, you might sit down and say, okay, my goal's 80 leads a month. I'm going to sit down in a process every Tuesday at 10. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to spend an hour prospecting. Right. And again, it's the process and the metrics that allow us to align all of our effort to, okay, here's what I did. And you know what will happen is you'll go back to these, even if they're meetings with yourself, right? Put them on your calendar, right? You'll go back and go, man, I didn't do that good of a job last week. Or last week, this technique really worked. So if I got to stick to my goal, remember, we're human beings. We're not robots, right? So some it's up, some it's down. And you learn what works and what doesn't work. When you don't have that consistency of process, it's literally like commuting to work. I mean, I know we don't commute to work anymore, but a different way every day. Right? So who's in Chicago? I went to law school in Chicago. I know you got a bunch of Chicago people, right? If you're going to get on the Dan Ryan, right? And you go there every day, when the traffic hits, when the weather affects it. If you go a different way every day, there is no way you can scale your business.
Makes sense.
Okay. So set your goals. I'm going to talk about priorities in a minute because everybody's going, yeah, but Dermer, I got 100 priorities. How do I set goals? So I'll talk about that in a minute. You set your goals for your priorities. You have your regular process that you measure. And then the things that you're doing each week, your what you call your to-do lists, or using project management tools, right, that allow you to stay on track with respect to stuff,
Okay.
right? All those things help your effort become more efficient, and you're getting more kind of process and scale.
Makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That's probably why I'm walking around, like I said, just like, because I'm not able to measure it. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's also a way to create your own accountability mechanism for yourself,
Mm,
right? You show up on Tuesday and say, man, I'm supposed to be at 80, I'm at 40. How do
right.
I tinker with this? Okay, remember, there's somebody out there that runs Apple. How do they run Apple? You got this amazingly complex organization doing all this stuff. They run Apple because they have people, process, and metrics. They have people that own stuff, right? They have process to measure how they're doing, and they have the metrics that tell them how they're doing. Whether it's launching a new product or whatever it is that they're doing, all of that flows down into an organization. Okay.
Michael, so we have a bunch of really great comments coming in. So I just want to read a couple because I think this is a really great topic that's in a lot of people's minds. So Monica, for example, I have my goals at 6 a.m. and by 7:30 a.m. I have completely different goals. Guilty. And another question. I know my goals are, but I have to revisit my goals often to keep me on track. And my steps change often and cause me to move the target, right? So this is what you were just talking about. And another question, for a solo entrepreneur, do you recommend my Tuesdays thinking about website, Wednesdays stressing about funds, Thursday something else, right? So it's kind of goal setting and then the process to which you.
Yep. Great questions. Remember, we are all human, so let's not forget that. I explain these like we're all robots, but we're not. But we do have to create a discipline for ourselves. I'm going to talk about priorities in a minute. If your goal changes from 6 to 7 o'clock, that's not a goal. Those are to-dos. Those are things that you woke up to do that day. Okay. Your goals are where you're trying to get to, right? So you have to take a step back and say, what am I trying to accomplish? And we're going to talk about priorities. I have a revenue goal. I want to launch a product. I want to launch a website. Those are your goals. What you do to achieve those goals are all these little to-dos that yes, they can change day to day. And I'll talk a little bit about, how to prevent that a little bit. Okay. So the first thing comes down to this process and structure is that it doesn't change all the time. Now, when you go and you set these goals, so let's say I want to launch my website in 2 months. I can tell you that really good disciplined leaders, the goal doesn't change. There's always a reason why you can't hit a goal. I got busy doing this. I got busy doing that. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. Be thoughtful about how you set that goal. Say, hey, 2 months from now, that's a reasonable assumption given all the stuff that I'm doing. But I can tell you it is in many cases an excuse and a lack of discipline that prevents us from doing that. Now, if you said 2 days, that's not fair, right? But if somebody took away your firstborn because you didn't hit the goal, you hit the goal. So that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean you're not going to stumble. But I can tell you, people that change their goals all the time, a lot of times it's just a realization that it's hard, right? But you have to make sure, if you've been reasonable in setting your goals, how do I plow through? How do I be creative? I'll give you an example. We did a big project for a big company called Fresh. It's a cosmetics brand. And this was the exercise because we were trying to teach about accountability and goal setting. And the exercise was, you run a charity event. The charity event's going to happen in a month. And you have to raise $25,000 in the charity event. Go. Right? And they came back with plans and they work on it. And then we threw them what we called a curveball. 1 hour before they had to present this to the whole company, including leadership, and we threw them a curveball. The catering facility that you said you had to use closed down, right? Because of COVID restrictions, you weren't allowed to have a banquet. Your main performer in the event, whatever it was, we threw them curveballs, and they had to come up with ways to do it. So the point is this: when you set goals, be reasonable, but you got to figure out ways to plow through. And that makes you a better leader, a better CEO, and makes you much more likely to be successful in your business to grow. Okay. So it is a learning to understand the difference between a goal and something you do every day. And also to have the stick-to-itiveness, just not just the energy, but the intelligence and where do I reach out and who do I ask for help, us included, of course, to try to stick to what those goals are.
Michelle, looks like you have a question. Michelle Thomas.
I was just gonna like agree with what you're saying. I know that initially when I decided that I wanted to open up my dream of opening up a transitional housing, it sounds great, but there's licensures and certificates and things that I need in order to work with people. And there's also surveys and studies and things that I need to do backgrounds and things of that nature. Like you can't just move forward like how I initially thought I could have done. So now I'm in the process of collecting the licensures and becoming more aware and more educated within the population. So that does make a lot of sense. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because that is something that a lot of people who want to open up their own organizations are not aware of, is the background of knowledge and just researching what you're trying to do and how effective it is.
And it's okay not to know, right? And it's okay to say, I don't have to know everything. I got to find other people. But what's not okay is just to wake up and work, right? Because you'll work, right? But if you said, okay, this is, by the way, congratulations for what you're doing. But if you said, I want to do this, and I don't necessarily know exactly what I want to do, one of those goals might be 30 days from now, I need to know exactly what I'm doing. So who do I talk to? What do I do? The other thing might be, okay, now that I know I need certain licenses, I want to have these in 30 days, right? Those are goals where you set the most important things for your business. I can't tell you, out of 10 people that we interact with, because I know a bunch of you might be saying, man, I wish I should be doing this. Don't think of it that way. We're all only entrepreneurs. Remember, we're all in this together. I can tell you, probably out of 10 people that we interact with them, 8 of them, if we just said to them, write on the board your goals, 8 of them wouldn't have them. They wouldn't have their sales goals. They wouldn't have like whatever it is. So this is a step forward. This is a step forward to part of scaling your business and performing. Okay.
So I was gonna just
Yeah,
clarify.
please.
Like, so once I realized all of those things, what I've started to do, I am in the field of substance abuse and mental health. I'm actually finishing my master's this May for the mental health portion, but now I'm working on the credentials part of it. So I am CASAC-T eligible. That's for substance abuse credential, and I am going to be eligible for my license in mental health. But then I also took the extra step of building rapport within the Monroe County Jail, where now I'm able to go into the jail and participate in their program.
Yep, that's awesome. That's awesome. So said in goal world, if I want to have $100,000 in revenue this year, and I need 10 customers to do that, right? And it's going to take me a while to do that while I'm figuring out the credentials I need. If I have that revenue goal, that means each month I've got to meet 5 county commissioners in the jails and figure out what I need to do. Right? So it works back from that goal, so that your process every week is, okay, did I do my 5 this week? Right? Or do I do my reach outs this week? And that's what keeps you on track to getting towards the stuff you need to try to get to. Okay. Somebody asked somebody asked a question. I have goals, but they are yearly. Should I break it down and create 12 goals? Absolutely. When you set your annual goals, right? I want $100,000 in revenue a year. You absolutely should be breaking that down month to month. And in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, week to week, depending on what it is. Okay. So, not all, like if you say, okay, I want to launch a product in 2 months, that's a little bit different, but you need these benchmarks to know how you're doing. And that's why those processes are so important, right? Think about if we're running a charity event. I need the entertainment, I need the venue, I need the food, I need the people. I need to chip away at all of those things. I need project management to watch that. I need a process to make sure I'm doing it. If you're not doing that week to week or month to month, it's very difficult to stay on track. great leaders can just pick an annual goal and go. Most of us can't do that. And when we're managing other people and other resources, it's hard to do. So it's the right suggestion. Cool. Victoria, any others before I keep going?
No, there were, I think we answered kind of the comments here.
Okay. Don't let yourself move your goals. Think about what they should be. Be reasonable with yourself. Don't be unreasonable.
And even if the process seems tedious and hard, it becomes a process and it becomes easier the more you do it.
It gets easier. When you show up to the second or third meeting every week, your Tuesday, right? It gets easier. Somebody asked a question. Oh, I know what I forgot. Somebody asked a question. Well, should you set it up where you go, do I do this on Tuesday, this on Wednesday? There are natural times of the week that are better than others for certain things. Sometimes it's, if you want to really hit the ground running, a lot of sales meetings are on Monday because they want to make sure the week is a productive week. So I would definitely spread them out. Like if you're doing prospecting on day one and worrying about money on day two, yeah, you should spread them out. Just stick them in your calendar. Make them like they're meetings with 20 people, even if it's just with yourself, right? Put aside that time. And certainly, when you have other constituents that are helping you, that's the time that you get to efficiently use their time and their insight in terms of what's going on. Okay. I want to talk about two themes that have come up from the group while we've been talking. One is I wake up in the morning and I thought I'd do stuff, but I do other stuff. And then the second thing is what I'm sure everybody's kind of talking about and thinking about and rolling their eyes going, yeah, but I have 100 priorities. I have 100 goals. How do I do all this? Right. So number one, for any of you that have seen the movie Apollo 13, there's a scene, Tom Hanks, if you remember, the spaceship is damaged and they're trying to figure out all the stuff they have to do to make sure the spaceship can get back into the atmosphere. And they're going through all these checklists and stuff of technical things they have to do. And Kevin Bacon, who's one of the assistant co-pilots, goes, well, what if this goes wrong? And 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 Tom Hanks says, we need 111 things to go right. We're on number 7, work the problem. Okay, so when you wake up in the morning, let's assume for argument's sake, you have 100 things to do, right? In a particular day, you can only do some of them. And you should pick the 5 that you're going to do that day. Okay? Because if you don't pick those 5, what happens? Do you do the 5 well? No. Do you do the other 95 well? No. And you wake up the next day going, wait a minute, I got up at 7. I went to bed at 9:45 and I don't feel like I got anywhere, even though I worked really hard. So the point is that when you wake up every day, pick the 5 things you're going to do that day. Leave yourself a little bit of fluff for the crazy stuff that comes up throughout the day, as it always does, but stick to them. Okay? And create that type of discipline for yourself every day, because otherwise you just don't use your effort productively. Second, priorities. Okay. And this is a really, really important one. Say to an entrepreneur, you have to prioritize, and they roll their eyes. They're like, what are you talking about? How do I prioritize? I have to do everything.
It's because everything is a priority.
Right. Well, for any of you who run anything, that doesn't work, right? If you went into IBM and said, well, what are we going to do next year? And they said, we're going to do everything. The security guard would come over, they'd take your computer and they'd walk you out the front door and lock you out of the building. Okay. That's not the way things work well. Okay. You absolutely have to prioritize. But what a lot of people, I think, have never been taught is, what is a priority? What does it mean? So you're like, this is a priority for us. Okay. How many times do you or friends of yours say it's a priority? And they talk about it. Maybe they talk about it the next time and then it just disappears. Okay. So what does it mean to actually make something a priority, and how do you do it? First of all, throw 10 things up on a board. Go, these are the 10 things that could be my priorities. Because remember, this is going to connect to the goals that I talked about in the beginning. Here are the 10 things that could be my priorities. Revenue is a priority. Launching a product's a priority. Hiring this person. Like, these are my potential priorities. Okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to boil it down to 3. No more than 3. Okay. When you make something one of these three priorities, you are saying these are the most important things. I need to raise money. I need to launch my website. I need to, whatever those are. If you don't know what those are, ask us, we'll help. Ask colleagues who are business people who can help. What does it mean to create a priority? Now, I will caveat this by saying, because you do those, doesn't mean you don't do the other 7. You just do the other 7 differently. Okay? So here's what I mean. Let's assume that we've made those 3 a priority. When we make those 3 a priority, that's when we're putting in place those process and metrics. We've said, I'm going to set a goal for that. I'm going to launch my website in 60 days. That has become a priority. A goal is set and a process is in place. And in that process, I'm going to bring all of the resources that I have, right, into that priority. If I'm raising money in that meeting every week, that's when I'm going to bring somebody else who's helping me raise money. Okay. So by making it a priority, you are setting a goal and implementing a process where you're going to manage and measure to the goal you set for that priority. Okay. So let's assume you have 3 of those. You say, I have sell 10 bananas. I'm going to launch my website, right? I'm going to get my trademark filed, whatever it is. Okay. Now, you still have those other 7 things you need to do. Okay. It's not that they don't get done. They just get done with a different level of priority. You don't necessarily set up a weekly meeting. You might set it up bi-weekly to do, right? You might not have as rigorous goals for them. You might say, well, this is important, but it's not the most important. So I'm just, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to have this done in 30 days, right? So the concepts still apply, right? The notion of goals or metrics, if you will, and process still apply. You're just not making as big a deal of them. You're not making them as rigorous or as disciplined. You might say, I'm going to have a bi-weekly meeting, right? Or I'm going to bring people to the table just once a month to brainstorm about something, as opposed to like each week managing to something. But hopefully everybody can tell is that when you operationalize priorities, which is what I'm talking about here, goals and process, you are operationalize your ability to do good work, to do it on target, to do it efficient, to learn more quickly from mistakes, because you've got a process and goals. That's when you're operationalizing your performance against the goals that make a difference. And that's when your business can scale. Okay. When you wake up every day and you say, what are you doing? Or somebody asks you how in your business, how are you doing? The normal answers are just kind of qualitative, whatever. If you took this to heart, you'd say, we're 73% against this. We're 84% against that. We sold 11 bananas. We're delivering eight days early on it. Like, that is when you get to the point you run a disciplined organization and you feel as if your effort is always going towards getting you from Tampa to Maryland. It's never going off on the sides. Remember, we're human. We're going to go into days. Things are going to happen, but you can never take your eye off the ball. And here's the way that I would ultimately think about it. Imagine if somebody gave each of you $1 million investment for your business and says, I love what you're doing. I'm going to give you money. And you said, I want you to come back to me each month and tell me how you're doing. Well, maybe before this conversation, you might have gone in a certain way. After that conversation, I know the way I would go in. I would say, thank you very much for your $1 million. It means a lot to me. I have it. Here's how we're doing. We sold 11 bananas. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. We launched our website 4 days early. Here's what worked and here's what didn't work, right? It's all about, but the only way I can do that is if I set a goal, had my process to measure the goal, and then brought those priorities to place within those processes.
Michael, this is great. Quick, very interesting. So Sherry said, select priorities based on the biggest payoff. Do you think that holds true for shorter and longer term goals?
It's interesting. The biggest payoff is a good way to put it. Those mean different things over different times, Sherry. The most important goal you can set is your own personal goal. Like, people very rarely set their personal goals for their businesses, which is hugely important. Do I want to make money or sell it or whatever? your longer term goals tend to align to not just what you need to do today. You know, hey, today I need the licenses to get started. You know, I want to launch my business in 3 months, right? And I got to do that. But when you're looking at down the line a little bit, it's not always the biggest payoff. You're investing, like we're working with a company right now that has said, when I really pushed the CEO on the goals, which they didn't have, it was to sell the business for $25 million in 5 years. I said, awesome, great. We worked our way backwards and we said, well, in order to do that, we need to have a certain amount of revenue, but we also have to have certain relationships. If we don't have certain types of relationships, we'll never do that because of this industry. And so that wasn't necessarily the biggest payoff today to invest in those relationships. Like they don't pay off the most today, they pay off more in the future. So, but in the short term, it's definitely the biggest payoff. If you have to raise money, if you're like, I can't do this unless I have capital, then raising money becomes one of your top priorities. And each of these priorities in early stage business take time and effort and creativity.
That's great. I want to point out, David said a really interesting thing. I find very useful to share my goals with others. It helps me be accountable, allows them to help where they can. Michael, I think that's something that we've talked about as well. David, that's a great point. Kind of bring it out into the public.
Yeah, listen, a lot of times in entrepreneurial ventures, we talk to ourselves, right? And that can be dangerous at times. We talk to people that have the same last name as us, and that can be dangerous in times, right? So you want these goals to be reasonable, that push you, but that, you know, recognize the fact that you've got a couple different things going on, you know, at the same time, right? And but at the same time, just always think of yourself, if you had to walk into somebody that gave you $1 million, am I progressing to getting from Tampa to Maryland, right? And if you're not doing that, you haven't put in place the structure to scale your business. And hopefully you walk away from something like this going, okay, I know I was working hard. I know I was doing a lot of stuff, but I never really set my goals. Don't worry if you're perfect about setting your goals. Don't, you know, if it's 10 bananas or 11 bananas, okay, fine. But put something down there that allows you to work backwards from it, right? And start to create the discipline for yourself around the effort that you put in place to help yourself.
Sandra's with you on the whole last name conversations. Sandra, that's why we always say, do not, if you want an honest and objective opinion, do not talk to your family and friends.
Sandra, we did an interview the other day. We launched this big partnership with the Milwaukee Bucks. And we did an interview the other day, and I said something to the effect of, sitting down and talking to the people with the same last name for you is not a business planning strategy. So we're right. Totally with you.
Tyrene, do you have a question, or is that a high five? I can never tell with these things. Somebody help me.
No, I did have a question. I don't know if this is allowed or not, but I would love to try to find a accountability partner in the group, because like you guys both said, I notice when I keep in my goals, like he said in the beginning, I change them. You know, I'm like, oh, I can't reach it, so I'll put it to next month. But when someone knows about it, it's kind of like that pressure. And then they follow up and say, hey, did you finish that? And then you're like, yeah, I have to. So
yes, David knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, let's make it us. Okay, let's make it Lonely Entrepreneur. So why don't you brainstorm a little bit and think about what your couple priorities are and your goals, and give it a shot and come back to us and we'll help you.
Okay. Thank you.
Michelle, go ahead. Tyrene, definitely.
I was just gonna say I'm so on board with that, with accountability, with like holding someone, and also with the support from my fellow entrepreneur. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with that.
Yeah, totally.
We have another couple of questions, Michael. Tracy, that's funny. At what point do you realize that you may not be able to achieve your goals by yourself, and how does one go about seeking out partnership or a co-founder, like someone who has a tech background, for instance, or if it's something that you lack?
It's a great question, and it's not just necessarily other resources, but other techniques you might use, right? So when you sit down and go, okay, what are the most important things? I've set some priorities, I've set some goals for them. The way you go about them can be all kinds of different things, right? It may be, hey, listen, if I'm going to launch my business in 60 days, there's no way I can do this myself. I need a consultant to help me, right? Or if I just don't think I can get there. So it's not just even waiting until you find out. You may just be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I've never done financial statements before, but I don't have any money. You know, let me go get an MBA student from a local college, from a local university that can help me. So when you set your goals, you want to say to yourself, you know, can I achieve this? And what are the strategies and tactics and techniques? And that might mean other people, whether it's co-founders or consultants or people like us or whatever that can help you get from point to point. If I ran a charity event, right, I wouldn't know every piece, you know, but I've run a 500 person company, right? So I can come together and say, I need somebody that knows this and somebody does this and somebody does this. And I got to figure out all this different stuff. So you don't want to wait until you're not achieving your goals to figure out you got to go get new things. But ask smart people around us, ask other business people that you know that don't even know anything about their business. Say, hey, I'm looking to accomplish this. I don't know anything about finance. How would I go about doing that to get from point A to point B?
Yep. And we have another accountability idea. So Donald will, so as Michael said to Tyrene, take a little bit of time, write down a couple of kind of your, you know, goals, and we'll come back next week and address these. And I'll reach out to you guys as well to make sure that, you know.
So why don't we put out a challenge to the group, right? And everybody can just be honest with themselves, right? So anybody that doesn't feel like they've adequately set goals for their businesses, okay? Over the course of the next week, write down your 10, boil it down to your 3, and come up what you think your goals are for the most important things that you should be doing. Don't worry about it being perfect or pretty or any of that stuff. You can scratch it on a napkin. And Victoria, let's set up a time, whether it's this time next week, or I know we have other things scheduled. Let's set up a time where anybody wants to participate in that, we'll all get together and see how we did. Nobody can do this wrong. The fact that you're doing it is right. And then if you can walk away with something that can keep yourself on track, that'd be great. Okay. Just a couple other things. There's some pretty good tools that are helpful in this stuff. There are project management and task management tools, and those are sometimes different, sometimes the same. We use something called Asana. It's a project management tool that allows you to track a whole bunch of things. You know, one of the things that we do in our project management, when we have a project or we have an objective, even though it's project management, right at the top of that section, let's say it's launch your website, we put the goal right at the top. So every time we go back there and we go back to our meeting every week, we look at the goal and we go, okay, and we have the key things we're trying to do and then all the steps. So when you go back to that Tuesday meeting, it's always in kind of your project management software. These are really inexpensive, sometimes free solutions. The other is task management, right? Is just an efficient way to keep track of tasks, the things you're going to do that day. You know, this is stuff everybody does on their own, but these are the disciplined things that make your business grow, right? And the systems and the processes of all this kind of boring stuff we're talking about, right, is ultimately what makes you feel like I woke up today. And you might not get all the way to a goal in a day, of course, because some of them take more time, but you feel like you're chipping away against the things that are the most important things that you're doing.
Yep. Michael, and for somebody who feels stuck in a circle, words of advice.
I think the exercise that we suggested for next week is a good start. Think about what you think are the most important things to do. Obviously, this all goes hand in hand with something that we talk about all the time, which we will definitely do another session on, which is called finding a playground where nobody else is playing, you know, finding a place where you're going to win, right? Because so many times the goals that you set are all against the backdrop of them. Okay, I'm going to launch a website, but am I actually going to sell anything? And, you know, all those different types of things. So what I would do is see if you can do some work on the goals. And if you want to touch base with us and talk a little bit more about or you're welcome to hear just about why you feel like you're stuck. I think I can tell you one thing. There's a lot of people that feel stuck because they drove real fast or ran real far and ended up in Missouri when they thought they were going to Maryland. So here's the way I think, and this isn't right. This is just my opinion. In this day and age, for every 10 businesses that exist out there, one, the idea is so good, it will always work, right? Almost despite how you do it. One is so bad, it'll never work, regardless of how you do it. The other 8, it's all how you do it. It's all how you manage it. It's all how you set goals. It's all how you do all the things we're talking about and other things that we talk about all the time that are the difference between people being successful at it and not being successful at it. So when you know it's mostly how you do it, don't get discouraged. You just have to retinker how you do it.
Yep. So EM to HR, does that help a little bit? Oh, might be on mute. Okay. Well, we'll definitely follow up.
Gotcha.
All right, so I think we have a real good game plan for next week's session, right? Because I think it's really important. And even though, a lot of people may have set goals, it might be a good way to revisit and make sure these goals are aligned with everything that you're doing within your business.
And start to put some of this process in place. Start to put in place these kind of regular check-ins, even if they're with yourself, right? Create that discipline for yourself so you're making sure you're sticking to the things that are the most important. One of the things that I didn't talk about that much, but you guys should be aware of, is also a little bit about standardization, right? A lot of times we feel like every single time we approach something, we have to do it brand new, whether that's your product or your marketing. And part of scaling is also standardizing. So one of your goals might be to standardize my sales materials, for example, right? And you might say, right now, every sales process feels different, right? And even though you're selling the same thing. The other thing I'll mention about some of the process that I'm talking about is there may be initiatives that you're working on. If they're important enough, you need a process. So if you said, hey, I want to make every one of my employees happy, and that was your goal, put in place an initiative where you have a regular process to manage to that, right? Sometimes you'll say, well, we have this stuff that comes up all the time. And a couple of different examples of that is pricing. I remember in my old healthcare company, all the time we were having pricing conversations because it was a new and different product. And we had a set price, but salespeople would say, well, I want it different this way. And we used to have emails that flew all over the place. And eventually we just had a weekly pricing meeting. Everybody showed up and we talked about price, right? And it was just that much more efficient. The other is the way you communicate with your constituents, okay? You've got employees, you've got customers, you've got vendors, I know one of the things that I used to do that really helped me is every Sunday, I put together a 1-page communication that every single department or initiative, sales, marketing, finance, make your employees happy. And in a little chart next to that initiative, it would have like 1 or 2 or 3 bullets. And I would send that to all of our employees, like anybody that was, and that way once a week, people are like, okay, I kind of know what's going on. So again, this is process type stuff that makes it efficient for you to kind of take all this kind of effort and energy as opposed to just, plugging your holes, as we talked about before. Okay. We always want these sessions to be informative and get people kind of re-energized, but it's how you do this stuff that makes a difference. Because if you don't do this stuff, a month from now, enthusiasm can wane again because you're not implementing the things that ultimately are helping you make process. So take it away. Don't expect you to know everything, like walk away and go, I got it. We will, Victoria, we will make this recording available to everybody.
Absolutely.
We'll send people links out to go get it. We're going to be putting these in the platforms, right? So everybody can have access to not just the ones but a whole bunch of ones we've done in the past, which we're almost done with, so we can get that out to people. And remember, you're all on record about setting your goals. So we have a record of holding you accountable. So
That's right. That's right.
cool.
Excellent. So thank you everybody again. Hopefully this was, helpful, and we very much look forward to seeing you next week to continue the conversation and move things along.
Thank you everybody for your time. Thanks for listening.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you just joined, we're just wrapping up because it's 12 to 1 Eastern time. So
Yeah, I apologize about that. I got the times mixed up.
no
I'll be there
worries.
next week.
That's okay. Come back next week, 12 Eastern.
Thank you. Bye.
Cool.
I tried to make a sound, but I was on mute. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed,
Ed, what's up?
All right.
Hey,
And I
Bob.
want to talk to you. You know I want to talk to you.
How you doing,
I'm
brother?
doing great. I'm amazing, man. Amazing. Just out here hustling. Thank you guys for the subscription agreement.
Cool.
I'm listening to everybody and I'm just going crazy because I've got so much going on. But I love the challenge, so I'm gonna step up and do my 10, write down my 10 goals. See you guys as well. But no, I'm pushing along, man.
Are you
Trying to
getting
raise capital.
Yeah, are you getting some good response from people that are the potential, kind of franchise owners and stuff like that?
I haven't really put it out there to the world like that yet.
Yep.
But I've had a ton of great traction in terms of just conversations with folks on all fronts, man. I mean, people love the idea and the concept. I mean, I think for me, I have one plan, and it's.
Let's see your face. Does she hear me? I don't know if she hears me.
Oh, she might not be able to come on camera.
Gotcha. No
But
worries.
she's been here the whole time.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
I told her it's great to see her here.
Terrific. Well, everybody, yeah, we're sorry that the session's from 12 to 1 Eastern time. So those of you that are still here, we're sorry if that wasn't clear, but please join us next week if you can.
And for next week's session, we are going to be talking all about goals and reviewing, people's goals they're going to bring to the table. So please join us.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
All right.
again, guys.
All right.
I'll shoot
Be
you that
well.
information. Bye.
Thanks, Nakia.